power trip of wrestling. I'm your host, JP John Paz. With me today, very special guest, former WCW United States champion, former WCW Tag Team champion. You may know him as Hugh Morris, but he is, of course, Mr. Bill Demott. Bill, welcome to the two-man power trip. How you doing?
Hey, man, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. You might be one of the few people that recognize me as a WCW Tag Team champion.
Really? You are technically.
Yeah. That's one of the few matches I remember.
That's not good. So how come nobody recognized you as the tag team champion there? That's
well, because Alex Wright and I won the championships over in Europe. And when we came back, they just ignored the fact that it was me instead of Disco. And when he came back, it was Disco and Alex were the tag team champions.
But technically, you really won. Disco technically can't even say he was tag team champion.
That's right. I accept that answer.
Screw Disco, right? Yeah, forget about him.
Screw Gilberti.
So what's going on in your world? What have you been up to?
Oh, man, so much. First and foremost, wrestling-wise, an amazing summer. I was honored with the Hall of Fame in Waterloo, Iowa. With the great class of men and women. So wrestling-wise, that's been the highlight of the year. By far, is a great time in Waterloo at the museum out there and everything. But just been very busy with the foundation and doing foundation work, and that's my full-time gig now. So it's kept me very busy, keeps me traveling. And, thank God, the message and the mission is out there. So I'm just, like I said, I'm just surviving.
Where can everybody find all the information on the foundation? We'll talk about it again, but where can everybody find it?
Well, probably the easiest way is to go onto the website, and it's www.thecarrieanndemottfoundation.com. And that gives everything we're doing. In all three of our chapters across the country and the things we're doing around traveling around the nationwide travel and doing all those things. But that's the best way to keep up with it. And naturally, we're on social media. Same thing with the Carrie Ann DeMott Foundation. People can follow us there. And we're just always grateful for the people that do send us messages or, give us the thumbs up and stuff like that. So it's been busy, but it's been very rewarding.
And that's great that you do that and have that foundation. It's amazing.
Thanks. It's not. I always say it's not what I planned on doing, but it's what we're doing and what needs to be done. So it's one of those things.
Yes, for sure. But getting back into the wrestling business, if we could, talking about that, how did the Hall of Fame come about? Like they just say, hey, it's you're going in this year and find an inductee or an inductor, if you will.
I got a call from Jerry Briscoe, who I love to death. I still call him Coach to this day. And it's funny, the story you usually tell, and I know you've heard it a million times. Like when that 203 number comes up, you go, oh crap! And here I am. I'm not working for the company, so there's no way I can be in trouble. But when that number comes up, I go, oh crap! So I go, yes, sir, Mr. Briscoe, sir. And we were just talking, and he goes, this, and that. And he goes, yes, so you're being inducted into, the class of 2023 into the Hall of Fame. And I almost fell down. I was at my son's baseball game. It was a Sunday morning. And I was like, what? And it was like silent. I thought it was a rib, because, as Jerry Briscoe will get a good rib in there. But lo and behold, I was with a great class of people. I was told I delivered a really good speech. I'm not sure, when you're up there speaking to a bunch of your peers and a great audience that they had. It was just a tremendous 3 days of being out there with the fans, getting to catch up with Haku, getting to catch up with Joe Malenko. I got to sit with John Nord and just so many people out there. And then just to be inducted was amazing. So I don't know how it came about, man. I always said I didn't think the only way Lou Thesz's name and mine would be in the same sentence as when Stone Cold gave me the Thez Press. So it was really cool to be inducted and given the Lou Thez Award this year. And I hold that as one of the biggest accomplishments of my career. So it was really cool.
That is amazing, and it's awesome to get hang out with the guys from yesteryear, Haku and friggin' the Berserker. I mean, that's great. Yeah.
Oh, unbelievable! And I've known John Nord for many, many years, and he's like, "Hey, you remember you were my last match I ever had?" And I was like, "What?" And so he broke it down, and we were sitting there laughing about it. I didn't realize that was the last match he ever had, and it was with me. So it was really cool that I'm sitting there with Les Thatcher, for crying out loud, and catching up. And a highlight for me personally was getting to meet and sit down and talk life with Thunderbolt Patterson. So it's just a whirlwind of, like, I felt like a kid again. I was like, this is exactly why I got into this business. So it was
cool.
really cool, man.
With Nord, was that his random appearance in WCW where he kind of just came in and was gone? That was his last match?
Yeah, he came in. He wasn't there very long. Yeah, his stint wasn't very long. He was in, and he was kind of in and out as fast as he came in. And he kind of just, as it turns out, he was injured before that and shouldn't have been wrestling. So his final match, that's what he said, I can't, his back and everything, he couldn't take it anymore. So he just did the Irish goodbye. But it was amazing, to sit there and sit with him. God, it's just Jimmy Valiant and Tommy Rich, and my gosh, like, I still, here it is a month later, and I'm still sitting here at night going, wow, this is freaking awesome.
Pretty damn cool that you got to do that. Rewinding back, like, as far as like getting in though, was that something that you always wanted to do? Did you always want to be a wrestler or no?
No. I never had I was a casual fan at best. I was a football guy. I had an opportunity, I played in high school. I had an opportunity to play in college. Obviously that didn't work out. But I told the story that night in Waterloo. My dad brought me to a gym in Brooklyn. I'm convinced my father thought he was taking me to a boxing gym. Instead, he took me to Johnny Rodz' wrestling gym. So while we were waiting for the boxing, I was watching the wrestling, and long story short, Johnny told me I couldn't do it, but I could watch anytime I wanted. So I took offense, and I went and scraped up $3,500, went back the next week, paid him in full in 1988. And that was the beginning of the end. And here we are 35 years later, still talking about it. So it's pretty cool.
That's awesome. Why did Johnny Rodz say you can't do it? Just financially, he thought you couldn't, hack it or whatever, so he tell you to leave?
I'm going to go with, because I think Johnny Rodz is one of the best coaches out there. And that class of guys that he turned out back in the late 80s and early 90s, I think, is second to none. And I think that was Johnny's way of seeing if I had, any chutzpah to come back in. And I took it exactly the way he said it. You can watch these guys, but you can't do what these guys do. And I'm thinking, now, let's not forget, I'm right out of college my sophomore year. I'm jacked at 350. And I know anybody in that, in my mind, anybody in that gym, I can tussle with. So to be told I couldn't do it was more of a challenge. And like I said, I was a casual fan. I used to watch wrestling on Sunday nights or Saturday nights on MSG. I'm a New Jersey kid, so my grandfather would have it on. So you saw Pedro Morales, and you saw the girls, and you saw you're not allowed to say midgets anymore, but the midgets were on TV. But I was a casual fan. Even going into that Hulk Hogan era, I was a casual fan. I knew about it. I was big on the South wrestling, the NWA stuff, and World Class. But I never set out to be one of the dudes. Even when I was training, I just wanted to learn, and I was having fun, and I was learning stuff, and I was catching on quick, and just opportunities were coming. And I think I didn't have any, grand illusions of what I was going to be, and I was going to be coming down the aisle and all these things. All that stuff for me, I was blessed. It happened. I toured the world for 5 years before I came back to the States and joined WCW and did all those things. And and then WWE, and the career kept going past the in-ring. So just being blessed. And I think it was just because of the same attitude that got me to where I was the same attitude that a lot of people said held me back from doing more. And I just took it as it came every day. I didn't have any delusions of grandeur. I didn't think I'd make $1 billion and be on cereal boxes, but it really worked out.
For sure. Well, sidebar, what part of New Jersey are you from?
I'm a Bergen County boy. I'm a Paramus, New Jersey guy.
Wow, yeah. Nice. I work up there all the time.
Oh, yeah. I try to go back as much as I can, yeah.
I'm in Asbury now, but I grew up in Holmdel, and then, Paramus Mall. Up there all the time. Yeah.
Yeah. And brother, it's changed so much, hasn't it? It's just, I remember that town when we had woods and a lumberyard, and now there's more shopping and freeways than I've ever seen in my life. So it's
they've knocked down like every tree imaginable and put up some sort of merchandise, or
you can fit it.
Coles, yeah, yep.
Awesome.
It is. It's almost too congested over there.
Oh.
Like even now, it's crazy.
Yeah, and that's the beauty of it now. I love to go back, and my family, we go up, but we're okay when we leave.
It's like, we don't miss that traffic.
That hustle, yeah.
And it's funny. Obviously, growing up in New Jersey, where we were, my dad, this is in the '80s, sold insurance to Pedro Morales. So
is that right?
Yeah. How crazy is that? He was in the Woodbridge area, so he wasn't too far from us.
Yeah, when I started wrestling, we went to a bike shop in New Jersey to pick up. To pick up Lou Albano.
Oh my God! Awesome.
Well, they're in the back of this bike shop. That's a legitimate bike shop. There's Lou Albano, Freddie Blassie, and I think it was Irish Dave Yohannan. They were sitting in the back playing cards. And as a young kid in the business, I'm just their driver, and I'm going, this is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And they said, sit down, and they tell stories. And that's what I miss the most is, you don't get those stories anymore.
So cool. And I just I wish I knew about it younger, but my friend's uncle was Captain Lou's lawyer. I was like, oh my God, I wish I knew this when I was younger. That would have been amazing.
Yes.
Yeah. Holy
Very
moly.
Cool.
And it's funny, going through old Polaroids and stuff. Like my dad has pictures with Fabulous Moolah. His friend has pictures with Roddy Piper. I'm like, oh my God, what the hell? Where was I?
Yeah.
God damn it. Yeah.
That was the thing for me, there was so much, like WCW, there was so much going on behind the scenes that people were wrapped up in. But I'm sitting there shooting the stuff with Piper. Talking to Hogan, like my first 6 months in WCW, I ran with Randy Savage.
Yeah.
Holy crap, you can't go wrong. So I was just taking it all in. Don't get me wrong. I got caught up in the nonsense every now and again, but like the backstage politics and, that grizzled veteran thing, but I loved every minute of it. And that's just the kind of the way I tried to approach it the whole time was whatever's going to happen is going to happen. And I know that's a terrible business model to have it in this industry, but I just took it as whatever's going to happen, I'm just going to be prepared for it, and we'll see where it takes me.
How did you actually get into WCW?
Well, so it's one of those things, right? I was in Japan, doing pretty well. We came in. Kevin Sullivan at times would book shows for the guys in Japan.
Is that Wing?
And so, when he was in Smoky Mountain, so Kevin would say, hey, in your off days, if you're back in the States, come to Smoky Mountain. And your off days, we went to Eastern Championship Wrestling when Eddie Gilbert still had the book. So I got to know Sullivan pretty well, and he always had this thing for big guys that could move and things like that. So at the time when Vader, so it was 95, when Vader and Orndorff got into that big locker room thing and they fought and it went on forever and Vader got fired, he literally picked up the phone and he asked me if I was still fat, number one, and if I was still wrestling. And I answered yes and yes to both. And I just come home from Japan. And so he said, be in Macon, Georgia tomorrow at the Macon Coliseum. And like anything else, unless you're there, you don't believe it. So when I hung up, I yeah him because I knew I started to get to know Kevin pretty good. And I'm like, yeah. And I hung up and I called the airline, and lo and behold, there was a ticket waiting for me. So I got on the flight. I drove to Macon, Georgia. I met Bischoff, Hogan, and Sullivan in the Macon, Georgia locker room in the Coliseum. The three of us shook hands, and I had a job.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, great to know Kevin Sullivan at that point, right?
It's silly to think how it went down. And because I came home the next day, like I didn't work that night or anything. I'm in the back and I'm looking at all these guys. And I'm going, I'm going to join this group. And then I sat home for like a month until I picked up the phone and I said, "Hey man, what are we doing?" And he got all pissed. He's like, "What do you care? What do you care? You're getting paid." And I was like, "No, I'm not getting paid. I just want to know if I'm coming to work." And the next day I had a FedEx with all my money from the prior month. This is the biggest check I ever seen. And once you're on their radar, they know they're paying you for sure. You're going to work, and that was it. I was off and running. That's
great. What did Bischoff and Hogan say when they first met you?
Hogan just said he's looking for people that he can trust. His words were, "I understand that you can do things and not hurt people." And I said, "I'll give it a shot." And Bischoff said the same thing. He goes, "Well, we're looking to bring you in. We're looking for new faces and everything." And we literally shook hands and we all walked out. And I did my best impression of trying to be stone-faced, but inside I was like jumping up and down. By the time I got back, I was like, "You will not believe what just happened."
What a whirlwind. That's awesome.
It was unbelievable.
When you look at it like, okay, I'm getting paid, whatever, like nerves are going crazy, or you relaxed?
No, totally. Like, let's not forget, I've been in Puerto Rico. I was in Puerto Rico for 3 years, so I was learning my craft and doing well. And then I was in Mexico and Japan for 3 years, doing well. But now I'm joining the number 2 group in the world. I've never really cut promos before. I've never really, like, there's a lot of pressure. And look, and the talent and the men that were there when I got there, this was a who's who of wrestling. So, how, it's one of those things. How do I act? How do I fit in? What am I supposed to do? And I'm like, well, crap. All I know how to do is be me. And when you got a 6'2", 350-pound guy doing moonsaults and stuff, people tend to either draw to you and want to get to know you, or they stay as far away from you as they can. So, but I was lucky. I knew guys from over the years from Mexico and things like that. And Jericho and I came in about the same time in WCW, and we met in Mexico, and I knew Haku from Mexico, and I had a pretty decent little following from Japan and stuff like that. So it really was a good transition. And I will say that I was really welcomed in. I wasn't treated as I don't know if the word jabroni gets used anymore, but I wasn't treated like, oh, who's this big oomph that we got to put over, anything like that. I really was treated well. And then I was thrown into the dungeon. I was thrown into the deep end. And I think it came back to Hogan knowing I wasn't going to hurt him, and I was going to be there and feed for everything and be one of the big guy bumpers. And I'm standing next to Ray Traylor, who's one of the best big men in the world. So to me, it was just every opportunity was freaking awesome.
When you first get there and you're like actually working, you obviously you get your check and everything, but what do they say? Like, what's your name? What's your gimmick? Do they give you Hugh Morris right away or no?
No, I was the man of question. And that's how I debuted on that Saturday night main event against Randy Savage. I cut a promo and all it was question marks. So they took one set of my one singlet from Japan and redid it and put question marks, send it back to me. And I'm like, what the hell is this? And it was all different colored question marks. So, well, you're the man of question. We can't figure out what to do with you. And then within, I don't know timelines anymore, but I'd say within that month or so of getting going, then I became, and I wasn't Hugh Morris, I was humorous. But the announcers split it up and called me Hugh Morris. So after like 2 times of hearing that, I literally walked in the office and go, I don't get it. And he goes, what's about? I'm like, who names someone Hugh Morris? And he goes, it's humorous, you jackass. But then he goes, let's make it simple. Call him the Laughing Man. So now as the Laughing Man, Hugh Morris. Now the play on words made sense. And, yep. I still did the same stuff, but it was just, I think they had to convince me that it was legitimate.
Right. Yeah. Like, does it work? What for you? Yeah.
Well,
What do you think about it? Yeah.
now in retrospect, you look back at it, and I should have kept my mouth shut about humorous, because how many years later I turned into general erection. So I think I stuck my foot in my mouth.
Yes. Yes. That was bad. That was not good. That was not a good one for
Not good.
sure. That's awesome though. Like, hey, you're debuting, and by the way, Macho Man's up next. I mean, that's unbelievable.
Randy was great with me, right? And I think he goes back to that day one. He knew after the first time working with me that I at least had an idea of what I was doing and how to control other people as well. Because big men have this stigma to them. They're stiff and they're this and they're unsafe. And if they get blown up, they're really unsafe. But I got to run with Randy for 6 months. I was running with Sting on live events and certain shows, and all the run-ins we were doing as the Dungeon and things like that. So the running joke was, okay, let the new guy run to the ring first and take 4 chair shots before the rest of us get there. So I was beloved in the Dungeon.
I could see that. I could see why, for sure. When you're working like Savage and working those big names, are they almost like say, "Thank God this guy's not like Vader"? You know what I mean? Like Vader obviously was a little stiff with everybody, right?
The only time I ever got really nervous was the first time I main evented with Hulk, and we were in Virginia. I'm not sure, maybe Norfolk. I'm not sure, and I didn't realize I was working with him that night. And Beefcake came into the locker room and said, "The big man wants to see you." And we made the whole walk around the whole arena because his dressing room was on the other side. And I sat there like I was a kid in the principal's office. And Hulk came out and said, "Can you hit me with your deal and not hurt me?" I had this lump in my throat, and I'm like, "Yeah." I said, "I promise I won't hurt you." He goes, "All right, let's do it." And he walked back into the part of the dressing room. And I'm like, that's it? So now I'm taking the walk of, oh my God, what the hell is supposed to happen now? And now I'm sitting, the whole show's going. At the time, business is hot, and now I'm in the main event against Hulk Hogan. Well,
Yep.
son of a gun, we go through the typical match and rake his back, and he does like you and the but I hit him with my deal, and he was the first one to ever kick out of it. And the match was over, and here came Beefcake again, said, "Big man wants you." And now I was a little nervous, going, "Oh shit, this may have just ended my run here." And he put a beer down on the table and said, "Thank you." And I went, "Oh yeah, thank you." And little toast of a beer, and it was the best walk ever back to my locker room. And I was like, all right. So I think, listen, a lot of guys can say that, but you get the blessing of the big guy, then you keep working hard and wait for the next opportunity. And I got to bump around with Hulk through the years like that. And like I said, same with Randy and Sting and Luger, and got in there with the Horsemen, and I was doing, good stuff. And so every time I had an opportunity to try to showcase what I could do, I tried to take advantage of it. But I will say this, everybody there, I don't recall one bad thought of being in the ring with anybody. Like, I'm not saying we all broke bread together and hung out and did all these things, but everybody I worked with, I appreciated. And I got to know some guys really, really well. And we had some great stuff and some fun in the process. And to me, that's a good career.
No doubt. And going back to Hogan, I mean, he's the Babe Ruth of wrestling. I mean, obviously, he put WWF on the map. He put WCW on the map. As far as really putting them into overdrive, I mean, he's the reason WCW was kicking WWF's ass, along with the NWO at one point. But, I mean, to get his blessing is unbelievable.
And for him to say, okay, tonight, and literally he'd say it, Laughing Man's in the ring first. And I made a point of beating everybody to the ring and feeding for whatever needed to be done, because that was my job. I always said in WCW, I was a bumper. I knew that going in. I wasn't Rey Mysterio. I wasn't, Lex Luger. I was a bumper. I was a big guy who could move and take whatever was given to me and dish it out as well. So it was, when I got the blessing of the Hulkster and Randy and guys like that, and Terry Funk, for crying out loud, and all these guys. It's just amazing.
I love Hulk, his like mentality on the business. It's like, can I make money with this guy? Does this guy look good? And also, is he going to hurt me? Like, I don't know. It's just a smart mentality. People don't realize it. It's like, does the guy look good, but is he going to hurt me? Like,
Right.
come on, right?
And at the time, nobody smartened me up to that. Like I said, I'd been touring internationally, so you were learning as you went anyway. And I had some great teachers along the way. But it wasn't until I understood it, like, half the time you think it's a rib. Well, make sure the laughing man's the first one down to the ring. I'm not being told to be the first one down to get that proverbial ass whooping or get mistreated. I'm the one that they trusted for timing issues, to get there, to make sure there was still action and stuff. So I learned a lot from that. And it wasn't, hey, is this guy trustworthy? Is he trustworthy in the long term? Because you can have a good match with someone once, or Hogan could get over on anybody once, but can you make a run at it? So I always felt very, very good about the fact that anytime he needed a certain kind of match, he would always look and go, give me the laughing man. So that was, and till this day, I haven't seen him in quite a while, but to this day, Hulk always treats me well, and it was always a pleasure.
I was buddies with King Kong Bundy before he passed, fellow New Jersey guy.
Yes.
And Hulk would say to him, loves working with him, looks like he's killing him, never hurt him.
Yeah.
So that was like a huge key. And plus made a ton of money with him.
Yes. And that was the key. Like, okay, how do you adjust that 15 foot in the air upside down, moonsault to hit legends with it, And I took great pride in the fact of never hurting any of them. There were one or two I did set up to make sure they understood who landed on them, but it wasn't anybody of of interest.
Like, I've seen you do it; it's amazing. And I've seen Vader hit a few guys with it. Like, he hit Macho Man with it. I was like, oh no! Like, don't hurt Macho. Like, he crushed Macho Man.
But that was the thing for me, Vader and my dear friend Scotty Bigelow. Yeah, I was watching those guys, and so I was trying to figure out. I looked like Neidhart, and I resembled Animal a little bit when I painted my face because of body type back then.
Yep.
But I was looking at Vader and Bigelow and going, these big men can go. So everything I emulated, which is the sophisticated way of saying trying to steal and make it mine, was from watching those guys, from the Vader splash to Scotty doing the moonsault and all those things. And Bigelow was one of those guys throughout my career who was always in my ear. Always in my ear. Timing's everything, and this is where you want to do this, and think about this. And so I listen, for all the stories that people do hear, they don't hear those stories enough. And I was blessed to be under a lot of different learning trees in my career.
Fan perspective, Bam Bam and Vader are the two best big men workers. Just like watching their matches, two of the best.
Yeah. Unbelievable.
When you go and you're there in WCW, like, yes, you're feuding with Macho Man and you're doing all this stuff, but they give you Hugh Morris and you're in the Dungeon of Doom. Do you think that's corny, campy, or what do you think about the Dungeon of Doom at that point?
I knew, because of doing the vignettes that we did. We were in Tampa every week shooting 3 or 4 vignettes that would last, for the play for the month. I knew that it was a little bit tongue in cheek. A little bit hokey. I knew we went full circle when we brought the Leprechaun in.
Yes.
That okay, we're out of control now. We got a shark that everybody knows who he is Earthquake. We got the Zodiac, who's yes, no. We had the Yeti. We had all these things, but I was very fortunate enough to branch off with Boss Man, with One Man Gang, with Ming and Barb. And so I think there was 2 versions of that dungeon, and the one version started to become Jimmy Hart's First Family. And as the dungeon dissipated, everybody went back to doing their thing. I couldn't have asked for a better a door into the company. That's just my. A lot of people go, no, you're ridiculous. You should have never done. No, I couldn't have asked for a better doorway into the company. I built up a lot of trust. I proved that I was a gamer. Doing all the and all the stuff, but then still being able to answer the bell when it rang. So I liked it. I knew it was getting, like I said, by the time we got to the Leprechaun, and then it was like we were the pre-NWO. We were bringing everybody started becoming part of the dungeon, right? Conan joined, and then Conan and I kind of branched off, and so it was always those things of, okay, we've gone too far.
Yeah. It was one of those things where it's like, okay, Dungeon was corny and campy, but then you're feuding with Hogan and Savage, so it's like you're at the top of the card, whether you're whether you want to be or not. Because you're feuding with the top guys.
And when you're running with the Horsemen, how can you look at it as cartoonish? It's like, okay, damn, okay.
Yeah, and it's funny, like when Sullivan and Benoit start feuding, then it's like, all right, this Dungeon Doom is corny, but Sullivan is and Benoit, this stuff is real. Like this is crazy. Like it started to go a little different direction.
It was intense, and when it started to get intense, that's when it went to a different direction, and we were like, okay, here we go.
Was that like legitimately real? Because I mean, I talk to Kevin all the time, and he's saying, "Oh, we laid it in, Bretta."
It was intense. Every match we had with them, no matter what the 6-man was, or the 8-man was, or the tag was, the understanding was, I don't care what happens, everything's being laid in. And it was literally like you had to pick a side. What side are you on here? It was intense. There's one match where I think it was Sullivan and myself against Arn and Pillman at that time, as Brian was, doing his thing. And it was so intense that we were fighting. Like I wanted to I was going to rip Brian's head off his shoulders. And you can hear Arn screaming and Sullivan at the time, not the eyes, get off his eyes. Like it was banger. Same thing with the Horsemen. We went, and I love Arn Anderson to death, but I knew I couldn't work with them. We had to go. We had to go. That was just, and it was understood. And there was a lot of animosity about that. And a lot of people said, I don't want to be anywhere near those guys, because everything we did was live rounds.
Was it just because of Benoit and Sullivan, or was it because of Pillman and Sullivan initially?
I think it was one and then the other. And I mean, as silly as it's going to sound, I was a Sullivan guy. Now, at the time, Benoit and I were cool, and I was cool with Pillman. But Pillman was doing his own business at the expense of everybody else. And at that time, now I've been with the company 4 years or so. I'm not laying down or letting that happen to me. And the pep talks we're getting before we go out we're about to fight. If you're not ready to fight, stay the hell back behind the curtain. Oh no, let's go.
Was that from Sullivan or Bischoff saying that?
Just various people. Like this thing is hot. You felt the tension. Like you were, and I think you were guilty by association a little bit too. So if you were Sullivan's partner, then you were in just as much trouble, and either you defended yourself or you were going to get treated. You were going to get punked. So I think that was the mentality that stayed with it. It didn't have to be said. It was unspoken, but it wasn't. Nobody was going to get punked on either side of that.
Pretty crazy if you look at it. I mean, real life stuff with woman, you know what I mean? Like they were really married. They're going through divorce. Chris is dating her. Yeah. And then on top of that, they're feuding and they're having these insane matches. They're in the bathroom. They're going through, I mean, just a crazy time.
And you talk about people who have known each other and traveled for years, ECW, and we were together, Japan, and we were together early on in WCW. And as things unfolded, they say, what is it? Life imitates art, but art imitates life. And that was a hairy time, but I think that's what made us go to the top. Everything we did was like for real.
What did you think when the NWO came in? Because then, like, everything kind of changes and goes upside down as far as they're kind of killing everybody. You know what I mean? Like, nobody's getting over on them for a while.
Yeah, and that was the mind. Not only were they killing them on camera, and I'm not saying they depending on who you talk to, a lot of people, well, they killed the business, they did this, they did that. Business was hot as it ever was, but
Right.
it meant you were starting over again because there were certain guys who were going to rise, and it was clear what the factions were and what the NWO was going to do, and that was all the focus was going to that. So if you weren't part of that, you're back to being in my opinion, a B player. And so, but any opportunities you had, you took advantage of it. So while you weren't getting as much maybe TV time, I could never say that in my career in WCW. I was on TV every week, sometimes both shows every week, but I was on every live event. I was on, I was in the mix. So I didn't have anything to really complain about. Would I have liked more opportunities to get involved? Sure. Did I do anything to stand out above anybody else? No, probably not. I think I did what I always did. I waited and, but we were in WCW and a lot of guys weren't waiting their turn. They were stepping on people and trying to get to the front lines. And that's how you got noticed. So you either jumped in that part of it or you did your thing. And I just did my thing.
When you look at NWO, I mean, obviously changes the business because, WWF was okay. They're like here after the Hogan era is over. Then WCW, it's like, okay, kind of beating them with Nitro, but they're here. And then all of a sudden the NWO and the business is hot again. I mean, it was basically Hogan era level of hot again, thanks to Hulk and the NWO. Amazing, right?
Yep.
Amazing time to be in the business.
Yeah. And then, but you knew that, okay, I wasn't part of it, but I didn't want to be part of Red and Black. I didn't want to be part of, then the Wolfpack, it's like one of those things. It's so successful. It started branching off before it had to. And history always repeats itself. The NWO did it. We did it when the Alliance went to WWF when they bought it. We could have stayed there for so much longer, but it kept branching out. And then ECW and WCW and WWE. And the end result, it still comes down to one company, one group of guys that's going to get over. So it was an amazing time to be part of it. But it's funny how when you were in the moment, it felt like we were doing that for 10 years, but we weren't. If you look at the longevity of the NWO and how things came to be and then how the company shut down, it wasn't really that big of a run. It was just an amazing run. The impact it had on the business was amazing.
Even as a fan, I always in my head think it was much longer.
Yeah.
It's basically 3 years, but every week, I mean, you're so focused on it as a fan, like obsessing over it. Now it's like, oh, if I miss a week of wrestling, whatever. And it just seems to go on. And it's like, oh, I guess, this angle's going on longer than I thought. But back then it was like, oh, this is like, that was basically NWO for life. It was like our life, basically.
Yeah. It felt like I was in WCW for 7 years. And when I was told I was only there for 7 years, I was like, that's it. It was just 7 years. It felt like a lifetime. But we were going just like WWF was going. We were on the road so much and doing so many things, and it just was a constant grind. So it really is funny to look back at it and go, it's like the Monkees, right? The Monkees were this wild fad thing. But if you look at it, the Monkees were only around for like 2 or 3 years.
Wow. Didn't realize that.
Yeah. So it's like this big phenomenon and everybody knows who the Monkees are, but they really didn't do much. But NWO was this big thing, but it was only around for a little bit. But it was so strong that they could reinvent it again in WWE. So,
yep.
It worked, man. It worked. But I was glad I didn't become part of one of the factions, black and white, because as you looked at that, everybody was jumping on the gravy train. So the only way to stand out was not to be part of that.
DDP is the perfect example of that.
Yeah.
Remember, they wanted him to join. He
Yeah.
turns on them. Like, that got him more over than actually joining it. Had he have joined, he'd be another guy, another cog in the wheel.
Yeah. Because they had Bret Hart, they had everybody. They had Dusty Rhodes in it, for crying out loud, Yeah. So it was cool, man. Just to be say you were part of that, part of wrestling, the history of wrestling, and actually involved in it is really cool.
Dusty said to me, this is years ago, he said to me, the reason he agreed to do that, and I'm pretty sure he was joking, he said was as a rib, so he got the chance to beat up Zbyszko. So I don't know if he's joking around or not.
I'm going to say, yeah, that sounds right.
I had me cracking up. So,
that's they gave me a shirt. Of course I'll do it. They gave me a shirt.
I just thought it was so funny. He's like, man, that was horrible. Like, what a rib. He goes, the only thing good about it was I got the chance to beat up Zbyszko. I was like, oh, okay. At the time, though, it was like shocking because he's like NWA, WCW full bore, and then all of a sudden he turns NWO with Scott Hall. You're like, what the hell's going on? Too much.
You're like, wait a minute, they've got everybody.
Yes. It was almost like if you just got the shirt, you thought you were over, you thought you were NWO, but it was deluding yourself.
Yes, that's what it was. Everybody's like, I'm part of this, I'm part of that. A lot of guys, I think, did it because they wanted that same schedule, but that didn't work out because the lower guys in NWO were always the ones on the road, representing.
Yes.
So
yes.
It didn't really work out for that part of it.
Nope. And I just look at it and it was like, okay, they should have kept Waldman around. I know he hurt his neck, but like losing him and then he goes to DX, like that helped WWF big time. That got Triple H over. I mean, that helped those other guys big time. Yeah. That's NWO cachet that you're literally giving over there. And for some reason, they broke up Hall and Nash.
It just was everybody. I feel like everybody was just out thinking it. We were not in a time and place there towards the end, that last 2 years or so, where anything was going to ride for any amount of time. They were always trying to reinvent the wheel, always trying to make something. And I think a lot of it had to do with the one-upmanship behind the scenes. Well, I'm the genius, or I got the book, I got the pen. And you've heard guys say it for over the years. We literally had a different boss every 3 months. We had a different booker. We had a different, if you could call him a head of creative at the time. So we didn't know who we were working for, what we were doing. And so, it doesn't have a long shelf life that way.
And that's why WWF maintained him. He was always Vince.
It always came down to an audience of one.
And that says a lot because, I mean, you guys had Bischoff, but then he's gone. Then they bring in Russo and they bring Bischoff back. And then at one point, Bill Bush is running. I mean, right? It was a lot of stuff going on.
Sullivan came back at one time. Nash had the book and this, and you were literally going, what do we just let me, when it's time, just let me know what I'm doing. That's all. I didn't want to get mixed up in any of the hoopla.
Did you lose your passion at that point?
No. I did at one point. I left. I had worked with Glacier in Atlanta. I want to say it was the same night that Hogan worked Goldberg. And I went over in the match and everything, and I love Ray Lloyd, and I thanked him, and I told Jimmy Hart I quit. My contract was up. I didn't want to renew it. No one was talking to me about anything. So I literally left that night and quit the company because I wanted to wrestle. I wanted to wrestle, but at the same time, I wanted to be a part of it. I didn't want to just wrestle when they thought, okay, well, let's let him wrestle. You know what I mean? And like I said, I had a good amount of TV time. I was working in live events, but I wasn't feeling needed. It wasn't necessary. It's just like, okay, just put him on, that kind of thing. So I did quit. And then I think they took it seriously when I didn't show up for a live event, and they called me, where are you? I said, I told you, I'm done. Jimmy Hart called, everybody called. They said, well, somebody from the office had threatened me. Well, you're going to pay us everything we've paid you. And I said, try it. I ain't got it. You know, I don't know what you think you paid me, but I ain't got it. And then they flew me down. I met with Bischoff that next week and was promised the world, signed a new deal about 9 months before the sale. But it wasn't even, now don't get me wrong, the money was a whole lot better and everything was better. But I was told I was going to be giving an opportunity to become standing alongside those guys on a normal basis. You know what I mean? Yep. So that's, you know, so I didn't lose my passion for it. I think I was just tired of the BS surrounding it, because there was a lot of guys who were treated as, where are you going to go? What are you going to do? Well, crap, I would have rather went back to Japan and enjoyed myself, enjoyed what I was doing. And that was the thing. I did not want to not enjoy what my career was. So, but as it turns out, I stayed there until the end. And
the bitter end. Yeah, right?
The bitter end.
What was the relationship like with Bischoff? Good?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't not get along with Eric. I think one time he had cross words for me when I was asking about, you know, re-signing and getting better compensated. But I think he had those same cross words for everybody who was trying to make a point. He was the boss and he had to stand by it. But I respected Eric, respect him now. And like I said, Eric was one of those guys who gave me a job on a handshake. He gave me an opportunity. So I don't have any ill will towards Eric Bischoff. Who am I to question the history of the business and how it went? I think everybody, what's good and bad is everybody has an opinion, and some guys who have an opinion should keep it to themselves because their opinion's irrelevant to how it affected them or the business. And so I've said it before, I'll say it again. I have the utmost respect for Eric. He took a shot on me and gave me a career. And if he didn't do that and shake my hand that day and look me in the eye and go, okay, welcome to WCW, I would have never been in WWE.
True. That's very, very true. What did you think about Russo when Russo came in? Did you get along with Vince?
Loved him. New York guy, trained with Johnny Rods.
That's right.
We had a good relationship, but the day Russo and Eddie Ferrara came in and all those guys, there was a line of people getting ready to just sniff butt and introduce themselves. And Russo knew who everybody was. And, you know, he became the popular kid that had everybody's milk money now. So everybody's trying to be his friend. And I just didn't. And that was my downfall. A lot of people have told me over the years, my downfall was I didn't play the game. I didn't play the political game. I didn't play the step over people and stuff. Hey, Vince, how you doing? Good to see you. I'm here. This is what I like to do. This is what I've been doing. He knew what I've been doing. And eventually it worked out for me with Russo and those guys with the Misfits. Granted, the name sucked in the beginning, but that at that point, that was the hottest my career had been in WCW. So,
what'd you think about the Misfits in action when he comes to you with that great theme song?
Yeah, and we got to do it. And there's Jimmy Hart, the guy who's with me the whole 7 years, literally talking me through things in the back in business. And how we got the name is because we were told we're literally a bunch of misfits who got nothing for you. So they put us together, and we took a situation and ran with it and got over with the people and had a lot of fun with it. And there we were again on every live event and every pay-per-view and every country around the world. And we made every trip, and, you know, we were making money and we were having fun doing our thing. And it just allowed us to be part of it and be free to, like, now you creatively be free. And we had that, I guess, that respect to where they trusted us with what we were going to do with the Misfits. So everything we did was ours. We came up with it, presented it to them. They liked it. The vignettes, all that stuff. So it was really cool to be involved in that process. So I love that part of my career there.
How about being the U.S. champion? Was that like, oh yes, now moving up the card? Like, here we go, U.S. champ.
That was cool. The first opportunity I had with that was with Scott Steiner. I think in Kansas City a year previous or something. Booker had got a concussion, and they asked me if I wanted to work, and I said, yeah, I'm here. So I worked with Scott Steiner. I think it was a good match. People were happy. Scott was happy. But it was the first time I was introduced into that U.S. title picture. And then lo and behold, coming down the line as they were doing things. Great storyline with Lance Storm. You can't go wrong with the USA stuff. And so I became the new age Jim Duggan there for a little while. And I took that as a high honor. I just, I have a podcast I do every week with my buddy Jeff Townsend called the Bill Demott Experience. And we just finished 5 episodes of talking about the history of the United States Championship. And,
awesome.
And I said it then, and it still stands true. I'm in the same group with Harley Race, Dusty Rhodes, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Steve Austin, up and down the line. If I can be in, it's amazing. So being that, I think I said that night to Gene Oakland, if my career ended that day after becoming champion, I'm a happy man, because it meant something to me personally to have that opportunity.
Cool moment too, and obviously working with Lance Storm, you guys had good chemistry.
Jeez, go figure. And that was what was funny. The running joke to this day with Lance and I is when they were trying to figure out what to put on TV, they'd come up and go, well, Hugh, it's going to be you and Lance. Can you guys figure something out? And Lance and I look at each other like, are you guys kidding? We did this for 9 months straight. We'd do it in our sleep, and it was so great. And Lance would always go, yeah, we probably did something sometime. We'll work it out. So we were, and that I took great pride in the fact that they put Lance and I in as a go-to match on any live event or TV or something like that, because we had great chemistry, and it was a lot of fun.
When you look at Jim Duggan, though, at that point, and obviously he's with you, and then he turns heel. Was that ridiculous that he's going to Team Canada for whatever reason?
I hated it. I hated it for Jim. Jim was dead set against it, but they convinced him this was going to resurrect his career. So the haircut, the shave, the Canada, it was, I can't speak for Jim, but I think it was eating him alive. And it just didn't fit, man. And you just can't, there's certain things you just can't do. And I think it was short-lived for a reason. And thank goodness he went back to doing what he did. But that was the hard part about that thing. That, not the Elix Skippers, not the Mike Awesomes, not the Lash LaRues, the Chavos, the Demotts, the Storms, Jim Duggan changing and then not being used the way he was promised and things like that was a hard thing to watch, and a hard thing to watch Jim go through, because I know it was really troublesome for him.
As a fan, nobody was buying it, to be honest. Like, come on. Like, he's USA.
It was a church, yeah.
Oh, like one of the most over guys ever. He's Mr. USA, no matter what. Like, now he's with Team Canada. I don't know if I'm buying that.
Oh, it was hurtful.
Not good. With you and like your WCW run, talking about being trusted, they trusted you with Bill Goldberg's debut, and like that to me, that says a lot, because it's like this guy's got to get over, but it's got to be against somebody with credibility. But it's got to be like where people are like, "Whoa, who is this guy? Wait a second,
right.
he just won, like right?"
Right.
So that's a big thing.
Yeah, and at that time, like I said, up until Hogan, nobody kicked out of that finish. So that part of the match, if for people to go back and watch that part of it, when I hit him with that, the commentating was in it, everybody was in it, and when he kicked out, my face and body language and everybody else was like, what the hell just happened here? And I didn't really appreciate the opportunity until years later, listening to Sullivan do an interview of why he picked me to do that. Like, it didn't bother me whatsoever. But to hear what Kevin thought of me and I was the right guy for it and all these things, man, what a feather in my cap. So I always said, if I'm remembered for a few things in wrestling history and Goldberg's going to be the biggest one, I think, then good for me. Good for me. And look at the career that freaking Bill put together.
Oof. He's still, mainstream,
right.
well known to this day.
Yep.
I mean, he was wrestling last year, for Christ's sake. Yeah.
Yep.
Crazy. You were number one on the streak of 173 and 174.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I always say I was number 1, and then I was number 12, 14, 27, 30, that's the running joke. Like I was number 1, but that was a couple other numbers too.
Did everyone see that, like, with him? Like, okay, this is going to be like the streak of something. I mean, this is going to be a huge star. Like, or what did they think?
I feel it happened organically because the people just kept getting with it, and because my understanding was even that night after me, they weren't supposed to say his name. They weren't sure what they were going to bill him as, but someone said Goldberg. So they went with Goldberg, and people one win, 2 wins, 3 wins. Oh, we have something special here, and the people just dug him. He was something new. He was fresh. He wasn't flashy. He was just down to business, and so when that happened, you were like, "Holy crap!" You're sitting there going, "How come I didn't think of just doing that?" But the machine was behind him. He took the ball they gave him. He ran with it. Did the best at the time early on. He did the best he could, and then as he kept going and was surrounded with the people, he got really good at what he did. Became a hell of a businessman, and like I said, his career speaks for itself.
And man, did he get over! Holy moly!
Jesus. Everywhere we went, the chants and the crowds were crazy. So that was one of the things, like, good on you. I want to be on every card you're on because we're making money and we're selling out and good stuff.
And you're a part of his history no matter what. It's like, hey, you're the first guy he beat.
Yeah, pretty cool.
It's amazing too, because if you look at it, as soon as he beat you, like, I was just like shocked as a fan. But then I'm like, wait a second, we don't know anything about this guy. Like, I want to know more about him. And then Mean Gene's trying to interview him, and like, perfectly done with him. I feel like, obviously he was pretty green, but perfectly done. And
Heenan and Shivani and Tanay and everybody did such an amazing job on the commentary that they just told a great story with him. So.
Absolutely. When WCW ends, obviously we're joking around saying it was the bitter end before.
Yeah.
Are you pissed at that point? Like, because Bischoff almost buys it, then WWF buys it. Like, what was their reaction to that?
Because I've been going on for a year. AOL, Coke, this one bought it, this one, we're being sold, we're not being sold. Okay, Eric's gonna buy it. Okay. And as you spend time in this business and stuff, believe half of what you hear or half of what you see, none of what you hear, whatever it is.
Yep.
Wrestling, until I see it, I don't believe it. But that night we got to Panama, we saw WWE production signs up everywhere, and we're like, oh, this is it. So I wasn't pissed. I was more contemplating, do I go back to Japan? Have I had enough? What's the opportunities? And I think that a lot of the guys were thinking that way, and a lot of guys were like, who cares? I'm on guaranteed money. I don't care if they get sold or not. I'm getting paid, but I was trying to figure out my next steps. So I wasn't mad at it at all.
Hey, well, Time Warner, maybe didn't make the smartest move financially, right? Because if they sold to Bischoff, it would have been for a ton.
Yeah. So what? I don't remember what Vince bought for $5 million or something.
Something like that. Yeah, I think all in total.
Bischoff had offered 3
65.
times that for 10 times that.
Right.
But they didn't want the TV. They didn't want to give up TV time for it and everything like that.
Yep.
So Eric was out and his investors were out, and a lot of guys were out. But like I said, a lot of them, they didn't care. They weren't taking 20 cents on the dollar. They were getting paid their full money. And for me, I wasn't a guy who had a guaranteed contract, so I had to figure out where I was going.
When that happens, do you want to jump ship to WWF, or is it one of those things where WWF contacts you, and you're like, yeah, I guess I'll jump?
No, so when they they made no bones about it. Conan and I were the opening dark match of the night. They literally came up to us, said, Shane McMahon says, I know who you are, I know what you've been doing. Would you start the show off for us the right way? Absolutely. Still my job. I'm there. It's still my job.
Yep.
Went home not knowing what was going on. And I think the next day I got a phone call from John Laurinaitis saying, Billy, they're picking you up. They want you to come and work for them. Everything stays the same as WCW. I went, what? I said, okay, I'm in. And then I met with JR a week or so later, something like that. But I wasn't sure where I was going. And then I got the phone call saying, no, they want you to come. Okay. And I don't think it's jumping ship because we had no job.
Right.
Yep. You got two places to go now. Go back to where you were comfortable in Japan, or, because they weren't going to be trying anybody out. WWE wasn't trying anybody out. It was two things they were doing. They were sending a bunch of guys to their developmental system, and they were bringing 12 of us up to TV. That's what they were doing.
When you look at it, obviously they own WCW now. WCW guys jump over. They do the mini invasion angle, then the alliance angle. Yeah. I mean, do you think that just looking at it was just not well done at all because they their heart wasn't into it almost?
Not well done. Now with my history with WWE and WWF, WWE, and working in the office and behind the scenes and getting to understand the mentality, it wasn't their product. They didn't homegrown it, so they weren't as invested. I feel like they could have definitely left WCW as its own entity, still run it, still own it, much like NXT is today. You still could have kept WCW over here, ECW over here, and WWE in the main picture. And we could have done a lot more business, a lot longer switching, but we combined it, and we kind of went through the whole scenario in 3 months.
Yep. And they didn't bring everybody in because of the guaranteed deals that they had from Time Warner.
Right.
So.
And then they figured, well, the people we brought in to begin with, they're not living up to their expectations, or they didn't necessarily like them, or some of us didn't fit in the back into the culture. So now let's bring in players that people are going to get with, because this WCW thing is a fart.
But there's no Hogan, there's no Hall, there's no Nash, there's no Sting, there's no Goldberg.
And then little by little, as the money situations were over and their contracts were coming up, okay, now I'll come and play, and now I'll do. And how do you get mad at that? It's good business. It's good,
Smart on those guys' part. Yeah, you might as well get paid.
Yep, they're knocking on your door. Now take advantage of it.
As we wind it down here, we'll head towards the finish. When you do work for WWE, I mean, obviously you were there for a few years wrestling. Yeah. When you do go, how does that transition happen where they're like, hey, we want you to become a trainer now? Like, how does that happen? Like, they don't want you in the ring anymore, or they want you to be a player coach?
So I was, while we were on the road and doing what we did, Tough Enough was their reality show. The first season was Taz. Excuse me. The second season was Bob Holly. And so they were coming up on their third season. And I was approached by Al Snow, who was the head trainer for Tough Enough. And he goes, hey, Billy, they want to know if you want to do Tough Enough. And I'm like, well, what does that mean for me? Like, what's involved? And so they laid it out for me, said it was a good opportunity. I didn't realize I was going to be gone for 4 months. But that, and how I got that opportunity was I was always in the ring. Before shows, before live events, before TV, I spent all the time in the ring, working out with young guys or working out with other guys, just wrestling, trying new things, or showing somebody something else that may work. And that was the culture in WWE. Like, get out there. Don't just sit in catering for 10 hours before the show. And so when I got that opportunity, that worked out really well for me. It was the highest show on USA. it was MTV at the time. Their biggest hit show was season 3. And so now I have some, some fire behind me. Fast forward, I come back. I started with Rikishi, an angle with Rikishi that went well, and all these things were going well. And then I broke my neck. So when I was out doing that, I was given an opportunity to be a commentator. So the day after my neck surgery, I was back on commentating in Connecticut. So I always say I was blessed and fortunate because the company kept me around. They saw something in me that I could keep going. So as my neck was healing, I wanted to get back in the ring. But I wasn't cleared to do that. And it was one of those, let's not take any chances. But we will send you to Louisville to train the kids. And by the way, there's another Tough Enough. So my calendar was twice as full, not being an in-ring performer. So I was going to Louisville, shooting Tough Enough, going to Connecticut, doing commentating and all that. And one thing led to another. And when they opened up Deep South, I got a phone call because we were going to move to Louisville. I was going to take over Louisville for Danny Davis. And that day we landed in Louisville, said, we want you in Atlanta tomorrow. We're going to open up a territory in Atlanta. So it just was always one thing led to another. And then after Deep South was done, I was out for a little bit. FCW was in Tampa. They were looking to reinvigorate it. Here's a phone call from, before that became the next Tough Enough with Stone Cold. But Stone Cold was working for WWE. I got my phone call from USA Network.
Wow.
So I was working for USA while Trish Booker and Steve were working for WWE. But at the end of that was USA's biggest ratings. So they invited me to WrestleMania that year. That's where USA bigwigs were. So it was in Atlanta, so close to where I was. And we went up and met with the USA people, and everybody was happy. And Hunter said, I'd like to talk to you. And so they brought me in back as a producer, as an agent, and then a producer. Then I ran guerrilla position for a little while in between. And I was going to Tampa on the weekends just to observe and see what was going on. And one thing led to another. I want you to take over Tampa. Here's my vision. And this, so I would just been in and out for all those years, but I think that's the success of a good career. A lot of guys and girls are fortunate to live out their dream in the ring. But if you can make a full career out of it, like Taz, in my opinion, set the example for guys like me that there was more to it than just the physicality. But I had a whirlwind career. So doing all that was just amazing. And at the end of the day, I became an employee of World Wrestling Entertainment. I wasn't an independent contractor. I was an employee. I had benefits and stocks and money and vacations and all these things, and in charge, and then put in charge of the whole developmental system. How does a guy going into a gym in Brooklyn, New York in 1988 have that wind up happening? So, and then to me, it goes back to ending this summer with the Hall of Fame. Like, it's clear I'm not an internet darling to a lot of people. And you know what I mean? If you're not relevant, they don't talk about you. And as soon as you're relevant, somebody comes out of the woodwork. My career's been outstanding. I don't regret one bit of it. I think like a lot of things you learn as you go. And as times change, you have to change with them to a degree. But what a ride, man. What a crazy ride. And I said it in Waterloo, and I'll say it to you, John. I wouldn't change it one bit. I'd do it the same way again. And some people like Mr. Briscoe's laughing because you think you're done. I said, probably not. I'm sure I'm hoping there may be a phone call down the line and go, hey, you want to come and hang out for a week and work out with some of these guys? Yes. The answer is always yes. And I still go around the country and do about 5 seminars a year and do some, boot camp kind of things with the wrestlers. So I've been blessed, man.
Great career, long career, obviously, for sure.
Yeah.
When you look at just like what you're doing today and everything, where could everybody again like kind of just keep up with what you're doing, follow even the podcast, but of course the foundation?
So I'm still on Twitter, Bill Demott on Twitter. They can follow me on Instagram. I think it's the Bill Demott. I know on Facebook it's the Bill Demott. We got the pod, and the reason I started with the podcast with my man Jeff was I love the business. I'm still attached to it. I still, if I see things or see someone that I feel as a coach, right? You can't get rid of that feeling. So as a coach, if I see something, I'll call somebody and go, hey, I was here. I happen to see this guy or girl. I think there may be something to them. Here's their information. Do it what you will. But without wrestling, I don't think I would have been able to meet the challenge after the tragedy in my family. Because now I'm speaking in front of thousands of people every week. You're prepared for, I think I always said wrestling prepared you for life, right? It's not easy. There's politics, there's this, there's that. Now I'm literally dealing with politicians. Now I'm literally dealing with, things that I never thought I'd have to deal with. But you got the guts from wrestling. You learned your lessons on the road. I was surrounded by good people with knowledge other than just wrestling. So that life experience comes in. And so when everything happened to my family in 2015, I was prepared. I didn't know it at the time, but I was prepared. And so I'm always say I'm grateful. I'm grateful that my journey took me to that point, that I'm able to get up and face each day and work for this foundation to make sure the message and the mission continues to save lives and make a difference,
Absolutely, and that's awesome, and that's a
you,
great thing. And obviously, people should check out the BDE, the Bill Demott
Yeah,
Experience.
it's a lot of fun. Like I think I'm a unique cat when I have my explanations on certain things in wrestling. It's a unique perspective, and I think that's it. Wrestling's an opinion, right? So I think if we can still entertain people and keep up with the product, I make no bones about it. I'm a fan. I'm a fan of all wrestling. I watch it. Some I like, some I don't like. Some is really good. Some is history repeating itself. But I like to say I was in the heyday of this business. I learned a lot. I think all of us that have gone through it have a lot to offer the business still. So that's just kind of my way of staying in touch with it and staying kind of relevant with wrestling. And then these opportunities, when you guys reach out and go, hey man, you want to do the 2-man power trip? Well, the answer is hell yeah. Yeah, let's do it.
Nice. I love that. And I love that you still watch because some people say it's not as good, but I mean, there's still some good guys out there like Roman and guys like that. Yeah.
You look at the rosters and whether that talent liked me or not, I had a little something to do with so many people that are still relevant and doing good. It's just I get to sit back and go, good on you. Good. That's all we can ever ask for is to be successful in what we try to do. So I get to watch these guys and gals be successful and living out their thing and going, yeah, it was worth it.